All right. Well, welcome everyone. We're so excited that you're joining us today for this panel with these three absolute rock stars who I've had the pleasure of meeting throughout my career in the procurement world. So we have Cindy White, we have Darin Matthews, and we have Travis Ball. They're going to be sharing the top trends in education purchasing today. Just some teasers. We are going to probably touch on some AI and some supplier performance among other topics. But before we jump in, this webinar is brought to you by Procurated. Procurated is the ratings and reviews website for public sector purchasing, kind of like the Yelp for public procurement, except all of Procurated's users and review writers are verified by our in government's higher education and school districts. Today's webinar is also sponsored by Connection. Just so you know, it is being recorded and will be available to you. We will send this around after the webinar. With that said, stick around because we are going to leave some time at the end so you can actually ask some questions of these incredible panelists as well. With that said, a few laundry list items here. Please make sure that any questions that you have, you submit through the Q&A feature in the bottom center of your screen. That way we can get to them. If you put them in the comments, they may get lost. So I just want to make sure if you want the best chance of getting your questions answered, again, submit them through the Q&A button. We will get to them at the end. So we won't be answering as they go, but feel free to send them in as they come to you. Because if you're anything like me, you'll forget in about 2 seconds. Okay, so here's the agenda for today. We are going to start with some brief introductions, and then we will get into the panelists' discussion on top trends in education purchasing today. And then, like I said, we will open it up to the audience Q&A. So please use the Q&A feature. So with that said, let me just move some things around here. Let's start with some introductions. My name is Jenna Gold. I am the Senior Director of Supplier Partnerships at Procurated, the site that I mentioned before. I've been with the company for 3 years as of today. Prior to that, I was at TripAdvisor and Yelp for quite some time. So I'm going to kick it over to Cindy for her introduction.
Hello, I'm Cindy White. I'm the Executive Director of Procurement Services for Collin County Community College District. Our offices are located in McKinney, Texas, in case you're wondering where Collin College is. And I've been with college for 23 years. And actually, next month will be 30 years in procurement. I started my procurement career at Collin County.
I'll go next. Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you may be. My name is Travis Ball. I'm the Chief Procurement Officer at Texas A&M University Commerce, located in Commerce, Texas, a little northeast of Dallas. I've been in higher ed procurement here at the university for 17 years. And prior to that, I worked for the Texas Department of Transportation in procurement. So I have a combined years service with the state and procurement of 24 years. I am past president of the National Association for Educational Procurement, NAEP. And so just enjoy higher ed procurement and hope you guys gain some insight from this webinar today.
Well, hello, everyone. My name is Darin Matthews. I'm the Chief Procurement Officer for Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo, California. So I'm very happy, Jenna, to join this panel with Cindy and Travis, longtime friends and colleagues. Just real quickly, when I'm not doing procurement, I'm also a longtime faculty member in higher education, which I really enjoy, as well as being past president of NIGP, the Institute for Public Procurement.
Great, thanks for those intros. So as you see, you are amongst a group of absolute professionals that are going to share some really good information with you today. Let's just jump into it, and I'm going to share my screen again and then get this up here. Okay, so our first question for these panelists is, what trends in education procurement have emerged over the past few years and really aren't going away? Anybody can kick us off.
Okay, I'll kick us off and talk about one trend that, when COVID hit, a lot of agencies were not prepared for to be working off-site and not have access to paper bids that were coming in, especially a lot of the smaller community colleges. Luckily, Collin College was set to, we had already been receiving electronic bids for well over 12 years at that point. But I think, us, even having done public or electronic bidding for over 15 years, we're going to be moving platforms to something that offers more functionality and helps our team to work smarter and more efficiently.
Yeah, I would agree, Cindy, that was kind of the silver lining during the pandemic, was kind of the push, if you will, in higher education and other sectors to go to a digital procurement environment. And Travis, I know we're going to see more of this in the future, and we go to this next level, like Cindy's college system is going to, where not just uploading, downloading of electronic files, but systems that have just a ton of features and functionality for the receipt and preparation of electronic offers. So I'm excited about this area. I think in 5 years, it's really going to be cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just to, expand on that as well. We were, when that time hit in 2020, luckily we had rolled out our e-procurement system, and we were, luckily we were prepared. A lot of other areas of campus were not, and other procurement offices throughout the nation were not prepared as we were. And I can easily say that, when we did have to go home, my team and myself continued moving things forward. And so luckily, we are in that age of digital procurement, and as you mentioned, that's not going away. So that's one of the things that was definitely a positive for us when the pandemic hit.
And I think we'll also see legislative changes as well to allow agencies to require that their bids be submitted electronically.
Yeah, I think that's true. So Jenna, if we look at other parts of the world, say in Europe, public procurement is 100% digital. We're going to get there someday, I hope, Cindy.
That'd be good. Another thing that, the question being what trends in higher ed procurement have emerged. One of the things, that an area that I oversee at my university is our hub program, which is the diversity piece. That is, something that we do here in Texas. We have the hub program. It's referred to as the historically underutilized businesses. We seek to do business with small and diverse businesses whenever possible. So I don't know, really, I'm not familiar with California's rules as much, but that is one of the things that in higher ed is a really big push. We seek to find larger suppliers that have subcontractors that can provide goods and services to our university. And so every day we're seeking to contract in those areas, when it makes sense. So I just wanted to bring that up as further trends in higher ed. So Darin.
Yeah, I've seen that too, Travis, here in California, both with the Cal State system that I'm a part of, and also the University of California, really looking to up our game and diversifying our spend and promoting opportunities for small and diverse businesses. Currently in the state of California, the focus is really on SBs, which is a certified small business for both goods and services, and then in construction or public works, and also disabled veteran business enterprises. Both of those groups, as far as diverse suppliers, get preference and goals within California state contracting and our public contract code. But really the opportunity is there for all types of businesses in California. And So I think it's an important area, Cindy. I think it's going to continue. If we look at the data historically, most of the contracts on the public sector have not gone to small or disadvantaged businesses, but let's provide an opportunity. I think we can do better in this area.
Yeah, I think encouraging and educating those smaller businesses and, the hub businesses on how to get involved in public procurement and to win those contracts.
If I'm a smaller, diverse business and I'm somewhat new to working with universities, what would be some of the best advice you'd give me? Where should I go first? Who should I call? Any advice on that?
Well, Jenna, I think that the procurement offices that we all manage is a good first stop. Getting to know the end users around campus, depending on the goods or services that a small business provides, that's also valuable. But knowing the procurement rules, if there's a digital portal that's being used for open bid opportunities, looking at standard contracts. And I also tell small businesses, don't be afraid of a big university. You can compete, you can provide goods and services. Don't let the terms and conditions or the paperwork or the requirements for an RFP scare you away. I've seen a lot of small and diverse businesses be very successful in higher ed.
And I think a lot of agencies, I know, for us, the competitive bid threshold is 50,000, but there's a lot of opportunities where we require 3 quotes. And those are the areas I see small and diverse businesses maybe having a better niche and opportunity to prove what they can do and expand from there.
Totally agree.
Any other trends you want to bring up that have been around for a little bit now and aren't going anywhere? Or do we want to jump to the next question?
Well, one thing that I just would like the audience to understand, being a state institution, many of us are state institutions. Some people that you deal with are private institutions, but as a state institution, I just would like, especially our vendor partners who are on the call today, to understand that, we do have a lot of red tape, and I'll be the first to admit that. We have a lot of red tape, but, as state entities, there are certain things that we are not by law allowed to, agree to. And so when dealing with us, I think one of the things is just have patience and understanding when dealing with a state, it's not that I'm trying to be difficult or my institution's trying to be difficult. It is just a certain requirement that we have, when going through the contracting process, that we have to ensure that we are, because we are fiduciaries of state monies. And so that is something that we have to ensure that we are covering and protecting our institution. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
Something
Yeah,
that was, oh, go ahead.
It seems like more and more we're receiving, quotes or agreements that have terms and conditions that require a lot of time on our part to have to review. And, some companies are more, are easier to work with and getting those red lines updated. But, just understand going in, as Travis said, that, we're required by statute in a lot of these areas on what we can and cannot agree to.
Mm-hmm.
And Jenna, the ideal in contracting is always, of course, to be the one who drafts the contract, and that's why we want to use our standard agreements at our institutions. I guess my advice to our audience is, if we are incorporating some supplier terms, maybe that are included on a quote, look at those, make sure there's no showstoppers like Travis and Cindy have mentioned, but then make sure in your contract documents that your terms and conditions take priority or precedence over any supplier terms if we agree to them at all.
Yeah.
One other thing before we move on, I know that in our prep for this conversation today, you all did mention supplier feedback transfer. So especially with as employees are turning over in public procurement, just a way to, and I know you mentioned it earlier, Cindy, having these online systems or ways to keep track of pretty much anything that's going on in procurement. But talk a little bit, if you will, about that information transfer and the idea of keeping track of past vendor performance at universities.
Mhm.
Yeah, that is difficult. It is something that we're trying to get a better handle on. I know we recently had a situation where we had an RFP that was being evaluated, and no one on the evaluation team realized that one of the suppliers that had responded had been disqualified, or we canceled a contract with them for non-performance in a previous life. If I hadn't been here, they would have likely awarded to that contractor because they did, once the evaluation was done, they were the top ranked, and I was like, we can't utilize them. We've canceled a contract with them because of performance issues. So I think finding a tool, and I think, I know a plug for Procurated. I think this is a great tool that agencies will be able to utilize to find reviews on those suppliers and, put that information out for others to be able to access.
And Cindy, when we have that data, then that's something that we can use that's very objective to either disqualify a supplier, maybe they get a lower ranking, to use that information to make a decision. So Jenna, in the past, I've worked with colleagues, we've had no such documentation, but then during evaluation, they want to say, well, everyone knows this supplier stinks. I said, well, that's really not going to help us really make a knowledgeable decision, an informed decision. And we talked earlier about the digital platforms that are out there with some of the features. This is another common feature of leading digital procurement programs, is a module for supplier evaluation. In fact, at the Cal State system, we're now implementing at a couple of our campuses a new tool that will help us do exactly this. And when we combine that with the supplier ratings, to your point, Cindy, on Procurated that's being offered, then I think that's really valuable information.
Great, thank you. So the next question is, what trends in education purchasing are brand new towards the end of 2022 and now in 2023?
I think one of the things that we're seeing, and I think all states, federal, everything, one of the main things is the cybersecurity. When you start talking about different state ramps, so in Texas we have Tex Ramp, so it's a certain certification that the suppliers need to certify that they meet the requirements. I'll be honest with you, I'm not a tech guy, so I don't know the complete details on it, but we have to manage that and we have to work with our IT group. I know that in the state of Texas, we have the DIR, which is Department of Information Resources, and they host a lot of contracts. And any of the vendors that we do business with must be certified in the state and have that state ramp certification, or by law, we're not allowed to do business with them. So this is, completely around the security of our institutions and our state as a whole and the nation. So cybersecurity is a huge, huge thing right now. And so it's just real important, and understanding from the vendor side that, once again, this is a state requirement, a federal requirement. We are just ensuring that we're moving this initiative forward. So Darin, Cindy, if you guys want to add to, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, I know in California here, Travis, we're seeing a ton of cyber fraud. Many of them are on construction related projects for progress payments, some really crafty fraudsters out there. to compromise our data, to commit financial crimes and financial fraud. And I really look at it, organizations like NAEP and some of their articles, this has really become a problem, Jenna, across the country. So we really need to protect our data, not just, privacy data, financial data, student data, of course, but this is the last few years. I've just seen it getting worse and worse, Cindy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as far as the text ramp certification that goes, that's really related to any suppliers that are going to have access to our data. And they're also will be required to go through cybersecurity training as well.
Yes.
In addition to that, Cindy, a lot of organizations are starting to require different insurance coverage with their contracts that have access to that type of data, with providing cyber liability in addition to commercial general liability, auto insurance, et cetera. A few years ago, Travis, I didn't even know what cyber liability was, or that you could require it or you could buy it, but you can, and look for that to be part of our world even more.
And that's good to know for the vendors on the call. That could be a requirement moving forward. So good point, Darin.
And how do vendors get certified by state ramp, text ramp, fed ramp? Can you point them in the right direction?
For Texas, they need to go to the Department of Information Resources website. And if you just type in the search bar text ramp, and it's TXRAMP, then it'll provide you information on how to apply. There's provisional certifications. So if and I believe the way that works is you might have another agency that can verify that you meet the provisional requirements, but you still have to go through and become fully certified. And there's a couple of different levels of certification based on the type of data that you'll have access to.
Yep.
What about something that you all brought up that I thought was really interesting was the change that you've all seen in procurement's role within a university. So how has that changed recently? What are you involved in now that you maybe weren't in the past? Can you talk a little bit more about where procurement actually sits within a university?
For me, Jenna, I've noticed this. I have a career just about as long as my colleagues. And in the past, my name may not even be known by leaders in an organization as chief of procurement. I was just the big guy in the back of the room, the bouncer, or whatever they wanted to refer to me as. But now we're seeing chief procurement officers or CPO at the associate vice chancellor, associate vice president level. If you look at Mississippi State, University of California, San Francisco, those are really high-level CPOs that interact directly with the Board of Regents, with the university presidents. I know you got to see this, Travis, because you're very highly regarded in your institution.
Yeah, thank you, Darin. Yes, it's, I believe, one of the things is that procurement at one point was looked upon as more of a clerical task. Now it's more of a profession. And so people in procurement, we've tried over the years to elevate the procurement profession to the professional level. And that is where we're at. I mean, I can even say over my 17 years of being here, I have moved from, reporting to an assistant vice president to now reporting directly to the CFO. And so I think over time, we've proven our worth, our knowledge, and what we can bring to the table in virtually any situation. Procurement generally touches almost everything at an institution. And so, and we get it, and we also get involved in non-traditional areas. I mean, I know you guys probably manage multiple areas as I do. I'm managing, the logistics area. I'm managing auxiliary services. I'm handling real estate and development for our university, purchasing and contracts. the hub program, the procurement card program. I mean, all those areas, although they fall under business services, are not all procurement. And so we're being put in different areas because we have to be very strategic in our thinking. And a lot of these various areas is a strategic thinking part of the campus. And so that's what I'm seeing, is just that we're getting involved in non-traditional purchasing type activities, and also, as you mentioned, just the reporting structure. So let you guys expand on that.
Well, one thing I've seen is, and I just heard about this at the NIGP conference last year, is partnering with GFOA, the Government Finance Officers Association. And that speaks volumes. They're actually incorporating purchasing training into their programs because they see how important procurement is to the financial stability of an agency.
Yeah.
And Cindy, I think that's a valuable partnership because we need to work hand in hand with our financial colleagues that are members of GFOA. But if you even look at your role, Cindy, in the past, we may see a procurement manager, but you're actually executive director on par with others, whether that's public safety, facilities, et cetera. So that's really, I love to see that. So Jenna, when new people enter their profession, I'm just telling them, hey, the future is very bright.
Mm-hmm.
How does that impact suppliers differently than what it had before?
So the one thing I like to say, and it when suppliers, we report to the chief business officers. The majority of us do.
Mhm.
It's best, when you start a conversation with the university, generally speaking, if you start the conversation with me, you're at the level where it needs to be. There are times where you have suppliers that want to go around and they want to go upstairs, so to speak, to the VPs, the president level. I can assure you that when you come to us for my institution and you come to me, that communication is making it to that next level. And that is one of the things that, since we're more elevated now, generally speaking, we're at that level to make decisions, to make recommendations, and they are respecting our recommendations as well. So I just wanted to mention that. So
I agree.
Yeah, I agree as well. That is the right level. And you being a small business advocate, Travis, you can have that profile to help them advance and get some exposure at your institution. And in the past, that just wasn't the case. We many times, you mentioned the clerical aspect, waited to be told what to do. And now we're at a position where it's the right level for a supplier to reach out to. So that's something, Jenna, that, just about every day I have interaction with the supplier, either current or one that wants to do business with the university.
All right, so everybody get their pens. I'm going to give you Travis's cell phone number. 555. Just kidding.
Send them a text.
yes.
Anything else you want to touch on this topic before I go to our final question?
Well, and kind of that, along what Travis says, find the person in the procurement organization that deals with the commodities or services that you provide, because if you come to me, I'm going to tell you how to register, but we have buyers in all, most of our agencies that, I have a technology buyer, I have a facilities buyer, and they're going to be your best point of contact.
Yeah.
Because we'll all be overwhelmed if you're all, contacting us.
Yeah.
You're getting all the texts from all the people I just gave your numbers to.
Mm-hmm.
All right, final question, and then we're going to open it up for questions from the audience. What's next? What is your best advice for suppliers who are wanting to sell to or already selling to universities and want to keep that going? In addition to current professionals in education procurement?
So I'll start this one off. One of the things, one of the first questions that I ask a supplier when, they're seeking to do business with our university is your company involved with a purchasing cooperative of some sort? There's many of them out there. And there are times that maybe your company's services don't lend itself to a traditional co-op type commodity or service. But, if we're going to buy, furniture or IT supplies or things that are common, one of the things I always refer to it as low-hanging fruit. If I have the ability to access a contract, whether it be a state contract or a cooperative contract, it is in my best interest to utilize a co-op or a contract whenever possible. It is more efficient for us. So, I just encourage, vendors that are trying to get in and do business with higher ed is to, really try to seek to partner through a co-op contract or state contract. So that's one of my main things that I would advise a supplier.
That really gets my attention too, Travis. If I have a supplier I'm talking with and they have, say, E&I, the Educational Institutional Cooperative out of Texas, a lot of us in higher ed are members. If you have a contract, I'm not saying you're gold, but you've got a really good opportunity to leverage that, market that to folks who do what we do and procure for higher education, and not do another possibly repetitive or redundant procurement process when you have a really good contract with good pricing and good product. Boy, if I had that on the supplier side, Cindy, I would be front and center. I'd be letting you know that right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, share that information because that's valuable. As Travis said, that's one of the first questions we generally ask is, do you have a contract through a cooperative or even another agency? We can do interlocal agreements with other agencies to meet that competitive bid requirement. So that's a huge, for suppliers, that would be my number one priority if I was a supplier, would to be to get some government contracts under my belt.
Absolutely.
And Jenna, even if a supplier currently doesn't have a cooperative agreement, going after the open RFPs that are in their sweet spot for public entities, I'll just use our system here in California. We have 23 campuses. All of them are great to work with, millions of dollars of addressable spend. Go after their RFPs, monitor their websites, see what's out there, what's out for bid, get to know their procurement office. Don't be afraid of the RFPs. Look at the criteria. Hey, is it based solely on cost? Are they looking at sustainability, past performance, and focus and tailor your proposal accordingly? It's kind of an art and a science, but it's good work. I think doing business with higher education is really rewarding for everyone.
Mhm.
And do you all talk in universities, or do you kind of stay siloed? How does that work?
I think we text a lot.
Yeah.
We actually, I manage for the community colleges through the state of Texas. I manage a listserv, and we're constantly getting questions through the listserv about recommendations on suppliers, where to find, information in the statute. So, we have a great communication between the community colleges and the Texas Public Procurement Association, NAEP. We all have those networks that we're involved with where communication is huge.
Yeah, networking is a big deal in higher ed. That's where I believe you learn some of the best things for your career is, a quick discussion at a conference, 5 minutes with Darin and Cindy. We talk a lot, and that can be a positive thing and it can be a negative thing. So, it's one of those things that I would always say, you know, having a good reputation with higher education. Like I said, people, you know, we have the listservs. We're asking, hey, have you heard about this vendor? Have you ever done any business with this vendor? What are your ideas about them? What are, you know, how did they perform at your campus? So yes, we are talking a lot.
So Jenna, just a quick example in this area, you know, this California specific, of course, we're a large state, but all campuses routinely talk to one another. We have a group, the Chief Procurement Officers Association. So people who do what I do at all of our Cal State campuses meet on a regular basis in person on Zoom. We have a listserv. If there's a good contract out there, we're going to all hear about it. And we want to jump on that contract if we're able to do. Just a quick example. A couple of years ago, we signed a really good deal with the Legionnaire to transport our football team out of state, but that wasn't an RPI had done. Sacramento State had said, hey, we have a deal, check it out. They're doing a good job. And it made our life easy, Travis. And that's just one state out of 50. So we absolutely talk and network, both the good and the bad news if we have a bad experience. So word gets around in procurement.
It does.
Great. Any last thoughts you have before I open it up for questions?
You know, the one thing I would just end with, higher education is a great sector for a business to focus on. You know, higher education is not going anywhere, and we buy virtually everything. I would highly, I mean, if I were an owner of a business, I would really want to push to do business with higher education. Like I said, we're here, we're going nowhere, and we buy pretty much everything. So that would be one of the focus areas as a supplier, is to try to seek to do business with universities and colleges. So I thought I would throw that in.
Kind of something else that just came to mind too. You know, a lot of colleges and universities are not only teaching the academic, you know, the traditional academics, but we're getting more involved in training our workforce. I know at Collin we have automotive technologies and automotive collision repair, construction management. You know, we're seeing welding and HVAC. So we're not only training in traditional academics, but also in workforce development.
Cindy, I'll just add to that list a program that I've been a part of, and that's training in procurement and supply chain for folks who want to do what we do, including in higher education. And I agree with you, Travis, this is a great sector to be a part of. I've worked in city, state, and local government in Oregon and California. In fact, I've bounced around so much, my dad still says I can't hold a job. But anyway, but I landed in higher ed and I love it.
Absolutely.
I agree.
Great. Well, thank you all so much. I am going to pop open the Q&A and see what we have here. Okay. Is there a preferred site that you want to place bids in and receive responses? Or do those all differ?
I think they all differ. And I think the best recommendation is to go to the website for the specific agency, because typically we have a link for bid opportunities.
Yeah. A lot of us, even though higher education doesn't have to post bids, we utilize the state of Texas Comptroller's Office. Their site, it's referred to as the website is TX Smart Buy, and you go to the electronic state business daily, and that is where, even as higher ed, I post bid opportunities there. You can go through, you can search by you know, commodity code and or by institution. Many states have those type bulletin board type things, but we still post ours there, even though we're not required to, because it's a good place where everyone knows to go to. So the ESD.
We do the same as well. We're not required to, but it gives more opportunity, or you know, better outreach.
Yeah.
What about, so I really like this question. Do you accept federal SBA requirements by employees per category, or do you have your own based on your state?
I'll just speak for California. If a project is federally funded, then the federal certifications, including small business or say disadvantaged business enterprise, can kick in. But in the state of California, the Department of General Services actually certifies what we call an SB, small business, or an SB for public works. We have both of those. So I would just encourage suppliers to learn, the states they're doing business in and the different programs that are out there. I've worked with a lot of suppliers, Cindy, that have multiple certifications depending on who they're working with, and that really puts themselves in a very strong position.
Here's a question. In your experience, what are your guidelines for split purchases? For example, if it's the same vendor, same scope of work, but different locations, does this qualify as a split purchase? Or in another case, some vendor, some location, but different scope of work?
I think a lot of times it depends on your statutes, and for community colleges and ISDs in the state of Texas, we follow the education code, and we're the only procurement statute in the state that has aggregate language. So any aggregated, so if we're buying office supplies, doesn't matter what it is, during a 12-month period, we have to meet the competitive bid requirements for office supplies because we're spending over $50,000 in a 12-month period.
So Jenna, we use data both on the Pro Card and then our expenditure or ERP system for financial payments to track and monitor, and split purchases really jump out at you. Those 99, 995, same vendor, maybe in consecutive weeks or months, those will get caught. And that'll provide an opportunity. I think it's a learning opportunity to work with the end user, work with the supplier to avoid those because we want to stay on the good side of the rules. We have a lot of flexibility, but split purchases are something that specifically avoid the competitive bidding requirements, should be avoided. So that's what we work toward. So if we see those on a list, Travis, that person's probably gonna have a conversation with me and the auditor. And after that time, then the behavior tends to improve.
Absolutely. We do try to monitor that internally, especially when we're monitoring procurement card, transactions. A lot of the times when I look at split purchases, you tend to look at an individual. I agree with what Cindy said in regards to cumulative spend, but in my definition of a split purchase is if Travis does business with XYZ company and my delegated purchasing authority is $2,000 and I do 19,999, whatever. And then the very next day I do another $500 purchase. Those are the things that I'm going to be looking at and my office looks at to ensure that, we are not purposely, splitting purchases to circumvent the bidding requirements. And so, another thing I will say, and that has been very helpful, is e-procurement. We set up catalogs. They can go shop just like they're buying online. They go and shop, they punch out to the vendor's catalog, and then they bring it back in. That's the ones we enable are contracted companies. And so what that means is they can purchase through that punch out catalog and it's already met the bidding requirements and they can shop. So what we try to do is set up catalogs that are competitively bid contracts and can meet several needs throughout the university, office supplies, MRO, every, technology. We try to have plenty of options for our campus staff. So that's one of the things that can cut down on that.
We have a question from David and Heather that are very similar, so I'm going to ask them as one. Can you explain your decision or rules behind why you would use a cooperative like NASPO, Omnia Partners, ENI, as you mentioned, instead of putting something out for a formal RFP. And as you mentioned, I'll let you answer it again, but are cooperatives becoming bigger and bigger when it comes to purchasing from them?
They are becoming bigger and bigger. If you look at a lot of the big players we've mentioned here, in this webinar, the national cooperatives that are out there, I don't know that there's a one best answer when to use a cooperative, when to do your own competitive bid or RFP. We do a lot of both at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. Generally, what determines it for me, Jenna, is what's in the best interest of my organization. Is it going to save time and money, get a great product? And I don't have the resources at the time to do a competitive RFP. Those could lend themselves to tipping the scale toward a cooperative procurement. But we do bids and RFPs all the time. I might say, hey, I think I'm a major player with this category of spend, whether it's goods or services. I'm going to do my own RFP, and I think that's better. So I don't think there's a one size fits all. And depending on the rules and practices of an organization, using a cooperative may be the exception and not the rule, or it could be the other way around. So I don't know, Cindy, how you all look at it, but that's kind of our thinking.
Well, yeah, I would say that cooperatives are better for those more commonly purchased, like we mentioned, vehicles, furniture, office supplies. Those are the areas where everyone is utilizing or purchasing those type of products. So in order to get volume purchasing discounts, we use cooperative for those. But like our custodial contracts that are specific to a campus or to the college itself, we would issue an RFP for those. So it just really depends on the complexity and the availability.
Yeah, I look at complexity. I also look at how quickly do we actually need these? Does the department that is requesting this product or service, do they need it so quickly that it does not make sense for me to go through a competitive bid process because I just basically do not have time? So the items that are there's emergencies that come up, and I don't mean an emergency to where you could justify it as an emergency purchase. I'm just saying there may be somebody that says, hey, I really need this by the end of next week. Well, a cooperative lends itself to me saying, okay, we can go to this contracted vendor. They can get it to us by the end of next week. If I go through a bid process, I'm going to have to post it for a particular amount of time or whatever. So, we utilize the cooperatives when it makes sense. Okay. And I'm all about not reinventing the wheel. If I know for a fact that there is a very competitive contract that is available through a cooperative, and I know that my institution alone could not obtain better pricing than a cooperative, which is based on spend from East Coast to West Coast. I mean, they're looking at the potential spend when bidding on these cooperatives. They're looking at the entire possibility of purchases, versus my institution alone. Obviously, in many cases, your cooperatives are going to get better pricing than what I can for my institution alone. So we have to look at that as well. So we just have to analyze it and say, does it make sense or not? So.
Yeah, and I would say also it depends on too whether or not we have the technical expertise to create the specification, come up with the specifications of what we're needing. And with like technology changes so rapidly, it doesn't make sense to compete that ourselves when we typically use Department of Information Resource contracts, or we can also use GSA contracts. So trying to come up with something that we don't have the resources here locally, then cooperatives are very helpful in that respect.
And the world of cooperative purchasing has been going on for years. The federal government does it all the time. Their GSA schedules. So I mean, it makes sense. So that's why I encourage you as a supplier to do as much research and see about what it takes to get on one of those cooperatives. They are competitively bid, so you may have to submit a bid in response to an RFP in order to earn a contract with them. And that's one of the other things that I'd like to throw in is in Texas, and more specifically my university, I prefer to buy off of a cooperative contract that has been competitively procured and not just negotiated. My statute requires a competitive bid, and so that satisfies it. If a cooperative has gone through a competitive process, or even 2 or 3 institutions go together and say, hey, you want to partner on this and let's do a office supply contract. If it's been competitively procured, then I have the authority to utilize that. And so I try to stay away from solely negotiated contracts.
And when it comes to the federal contracts, state and local governments they can use contracts for technology and law enforcement, homeland security. But in the case of a disaster or an emergency, we can utilize any of the GSA contracts.
So next question is, how often do you give, this is from Vivek, how often do you give opportunities to new vendors? In the past, the first question I get is, are you doing business with other colleges? And until we get our first project, that question is difficult to answer. So do you have any advice there?
I think kind of going back to I mentioned earlier is, seek out those smaller opportunities to establish a relationship. Those procurements that require like 3 quotes, and that could establish you as doing business with colleges and universities. So
yeah, and I think it also depends on what we're talking about. Okay, if we're talking about you selling office supplies to my university, I'll go out on a limb, so to speak, and do business with you to see how your service is. Now, if we're talking about building a $65 million building out here as a construction contractor, I know that we're not going to do that right off the bat. We would like to see how you perform on smaller projects, maybe some renovation projects and things like that, to see how well you perform on those smaller projects. So I think it has a lot to do with maybe the complexity of what we're referring to. Something as simple as office supplies, it's low risk. It's very simple to get in there and do business. But I think the more complex the service or the product gets, we want to know that you have a history of good service and someone we can call, like I said, as a reference. Hey, how did XYZ company do on, that furniture install job in the library? We want to know, did they meet their timelines? Did they perform clean work, and did they, things like that. So that's why we're wanting to know a lot of times, have you done business with another higher ed institution? So we can call and check on that. So
Jen, I think for my institution, I'll just share that I would say continually we're looking for new suppliers of all types, including small and diverse suppliers, on a continual basis, either as a direct bid or RFP if the opportunity fits their experience and their capacity, or more and more in the public works space. We have millions of dollars, maybe over $1 billion in housing projects coming up. So that includes prime and subcontractors, suppliers of all types. So if we can help them get on, maybe if we selected a large general contractor, but there's opportunities for a subcontract or a supplier contract within that, we'll make those connections. So as far as the timing, for us, it's continual.
All right, I'd like to end on one final question. I know this is something that came up in our pre-discussion. Paul asked, what functional elements are you looking for, or do you consider in e-procurement or end-to-end procurement systems? I know, Cindy, you mentioned that you recently started using OpenGov. Can you talk a little bit about what goes into those decisions?
Well, we had been using another e-procurement or sourcing and bidding platform for over 15 years, and just coming up to the end of our contract, I wanted to see what other systems were out there, and what functionality they provided that we weren't currently receiving. So, looking at, functionality, making the job easier. One of the big things that, made us, encouraged us to go to OpenGov was the project intake feature, that we can get that directly from the end users, the departments, get their, ask questions, have some leading questions to help us to develop the solicitation.
So I think the functionality for us as well, Cindy, was important. We used a lot of different systems out there. The Cal State system now is under contract with Jagger, who's a big player in higher ed space. There's other great providers out there, but just from personal experience, the breadth of their functionality, supplier management, which has been really untapped at my university, sourcing, cataloging, vendor onboarding, all those types of things. So I think, as you mentioned, Cindy, the features and functionality is really what I would look at, and really from a procure to pay or a P2P viewpoint, not just, only contract management, but at least that's the way we view it.
Mm-hmm.
Agree.
Yeah, and the sharing of specification, going to OpenGov will be able to have access to a huge library. Anyone that's on OpenGov will be able to utilize their, we won't have to reinvent the wheel. They've got a set of specifications out there that we can tailor to what our needs are.
Great. And with that, hey, thank you all so much for this wonderful webinar. We hope that you all enjoyed it. I cannot thank you enough, Cindy, Travis, Darin. It's been amazing. So hopefully we can do this some other time in the future. If anybody has any questions following this for any of our panelists or myself, I sent my email through into the chat, and I will be sending a follow-up email with the recording. So with that, thank you again for joining us. Have a great rest of your week, and thank you again to our amazing panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you all the best.
Wow. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.